Hey, how's it going, everyone? How's it going? Greetings and much blessings. Given the date of this particular live stream, I know that a lot of people have been doing a lot of holiday festivities. So, not to take away from that. Yeah, not to take away from that. Just want a lot of people to keep some things in mind in regards to what we consume. Because what you put out is reflective of what you put in. Some things have a hard time getting out, especially getting out of us properly. Of course, the things that are harder to get out of our bodies, they become more parasitic, hence, they become more cancerous. So, yeah, you got to keep in mind what you eat. Make sure you don't eat things that are more cancerous for you. Everything you put in should be able to come right out. And not only come right out, but come right out in a excuse me, y'all. I apologize. It should things that we put in us should be coming right out in a more efficient way, in a more healthy way. So, yes, as we build up gases and stuff like that, things like that, well, a lot of it is pertaining to something that we put in that isn't necessarily halal or kosher. Hey, much blessings to you, Brown Do Life. I'm not sure if I should have you as a moderator, but if I don't, I'll have you as a moderator. And yeah, catch me later on. Uh, glad you stopped by either way. Yes. So that's the thing. Yeah, we want to be healthier. So that's why I named this particular live stream what it is. Is man-made. Yes, is man-made meat halal or kosher? Now, when I speak of meat, doesn't have to necessarily be animal based. It could be plant based. Either way, that is meat. Either way, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about is those things like that that are halal or kosher, no matter what type of meat it is. So I hope everyone has had a good one so far. Oh yeah, and it looks like I just checked on my other device. Yes, Brown Do Life is a moderator. Just wanted to verify. But yeah, uh, we'll continue on here. Yeah. So let's continue on. Let's talk more about this because yes, as some have noticed, this live stream has been I don't know, the dates have shifted quite a bit over time. Not by design, I promise you. Not by design. I was under the weather for a few months, and that could have attributed due to what has contributed. Basically, parasites that are out here, airborne parasites. A lot of this stuff comes from the food that we consume, from even the bloodborne to the foodborne, and it becomes airborne after such a time. But yeah, let's talk about what's halal and what's kosher. I'll have one scripture, maybe a few, or maybe a scripture reference for this particular live stream. This is pretty much straightforward, so I didn't feel like I needed to do an exhausted effort for this live stream, but there was just a lot of things that I've gathered over time of making this live stream that I felt that was necessary to put down, but still it took time to put together. So after all the different dates, here we are. We're finally doing this live stream. By the way, FYI, I'll speak on gluttony down the road because the Bible talks about gluttony. Okay. Um, but we see all these mukbang type of videos here on YouTube. even what some will call ASMR, but it's not really ASMR. If a person is eating and they're just, when they chewing, it sounds sort of disgusting. I'm not going to give y'all an example, but basically they just smacking and the way they sound. You know how some people sound disgusting when they're eating. Okay, but they make videos of this, and you see a person just hammering down twice the amount of food that a normal person would eat. Well, that's definitely a lot of gluttony. They used to make bad reference to wolves for this reason, because a wolf will gorge. The way they eat is well, the reason why wolves eat the way they do, because there might not be another time they can eat right away. So they eat what they can right away. So in that sense, that's not gluttony what a wolf does, but a lot of the earlier Christian explorers here to North America, as well as even parts of Europe, they would talk down on wolves because of the way a wolf would eat. No, wolves gorge. Wolves don't have this thing called gluttony, where they eat excessively and eat on three times what they would normally eat. See, the way a wolf eats, you would be like, wow, they gorge. That's actually the way a wolf normally eats. Even puppies. I've seen a wolf pup. They will eat up a bowl quicker than an adult dog will. I promise you. A wolf pup will eat up a bowl quicker than an adult dog will. Yes, indeed. But that's just the way a wolf normally eat, because of the way it is in the wild. They might not know when they'll get their second meal again. And, well, you got other predators trying to take their food. Not to digress, I just wanted to add that to this idea that I'll be talking about gluttony down the road, but now you get somewhat of an idea about that. But yeah, without any further ado, around the world in regards to whatever is halal or kosher, first of all, what is considered halal or kosher? Well, from what I've gathered, when it comes to things that are halal or kosher, when it comes to meat, the main thing you need to know is that it's more or less to where when they get any type of live animal, they harvest it in a humane way. If that animal is not harvested in a humane way, it's not considered halal or kosher. Halal is basically the Islamic or Muslim perspective of that. And kosher is the Jewish or Hebraic or Hebrew perspective of that, okay? So keep that in mind. Around the world, though, for example, what can we consider halal or kosher? It goes very deep, because we're not just only talking about the harvest of an animal in a humane way. Well, it's that particular harvesting, or that particular animal, is it humane enough for us to harvest? Well, around the world, most people eat pork, but amongst a lot of the Islamic, Hebraic, and Jewish people, no, they don't see that as halal or kosher, that particular animal, the pork, the pig, because it's not a humane enough animal to harvest and consume, even if you try to do it in a humane way. And what is this humane way? Well, you just basically you don't take it to a slaughterhouse. That's what they consider as not humane, by butchering animals at a slaughterhouse amongst a lot of blood, and then you serve it on to the dinner table. Like, basically the most humane way, which that once again that's defined as being halal or kosher, is when um you basically hunt the animal like you would in the wild, versus slaughtering it like in a slaughterhouse, where they have to smell the blood of other animals and they know their fate. So they're filled with all this fear, and that fear actually gets in the blood, and that's what makes the animal taste a little different. But this is also why Wagyu beef is more expensive than regular beef, because Wagyu beef is pretty much hunted down versus it being like cattle put in the slaughter. So basically, you got all these well-fed cattle that are in Japan, Kobe, Japan, and they're allowed to roam. And so the way they hunt them down and the way they consume them, the way they harvest them is pretty much in the natural way of how you do it versus you systematically put cattle in a pen and you euthanize them around other cattle, by the way, and then you take them to a slaughterhouse around other cattle, by the way. So, but getting back to the way this also is done with pigs, pork, uh, and of course, there's this argument of wild boar, is that healthier than pork? But that's for another conversation because wild boar is the wild version of a pig. Um, the thing is, when you actually try to harvest a pig, even if you try to do it in a halal or kosher way, pigs have a lot of different parasites, even in their fat, that still gets into the blood. So there's that, you know. So no matter how much you cook down pork, it still can be tainted and infected in certain ways. But around the world, people have found ways around this. You usually see it with a lot of tribal people, and not that I'm advocating eating pork or anything like that, but from my perspective, what a lot of them do is they put the hog either on an open fire or they find ways to clean it off before they put the hog on the open fire. They still try to drain it out, like if it has blood, they drain it out just like they would in a more humane way, more halal or kosher, because that's the other thing. You have to drain the blood out the animal too. You know, after you hunt it, you drain out the blood. You don't, you don't euthanize it. And then, in the slaughterhouse, you start to butcher it and then let the blood drain out at the same time. So, but with a lot of the pork around the world, they try to do it in that sense of where uh, a lot of these pigs that they hunt down are usually free ranging pigs. They're not pigs that we know of here in the Western country where we buy from the stores that, after the pig was sent from the slaughterhouse, where things were not done halal or kosher. Okay. Around the world, though, uh, this is how normally pigs or pork is done in a more natural way, even though it's still not going to be as halal or kosher as you think it is. Like, but the reason why this too, like pork is actually more popular than beef around the world, not just due to religious reasons, but also because of how easy it is to cook and come out right with the flavors. Yes, the thing that will kill you is the thing that you like. So what I mean by that is that same parasitic fat on a pig that I just talked about is also the same thing that makes the pig taste the way it do. Like, and I'm not gonna lie, like back during the days I ate a lot of pork, that's what drew me to it as well. Because a pork steak or a pork chop over the grill actually tastes better than a beef steak over the grill. Yes, it does. I hate to say it. Even Wagyu. Wagyu's great, but it's something about pork steak. But even though it's good to you, don't mean it's good for you. That's what I had to learn. So over time, I just stopped wanting that pork steak, but it is very tempting because, yeah, it's the thing that's good to you. You might not be thinking at the time how good it isn't for you because I'm gonna just say it once again, a pork steak over the grill, pork chop, it tastes much better than a beef steak over the grill. Like, and so I want y'all to hear an excerpt of this because people from around the world, they have this perspective about it, about pork itself, because uh, overall, yeah, that's why they cook with it. But yeah, I want to talk more about the I want to talk more about the religious side of this. Okay, the religious side of this is, um, so you have, like I said, the Islamic and the Jewish and the Hebraic that refuse to eat pork and they would rather stick with beef, right? So there's a place in the world for that. But imagine the other side of that place, they don't do that. So I'm thinking of Pakistan. Pakistan, they are Islamic. They eat beef. The other side is India. They don't eat beef because religiously they can't, based on their culture. Now, the funny other thing about India is that they also don't eat pork either, from what I've gathered. So there's that with India. India is mostly like vegan and chicken. Like that's the only thing they really eat is chicken as far as meats. Last time I checked. So somebody can correct me on that, but I haven't known of anybody in India eating pork last time I checked. Okay. But outside of that little pocket of the world, you got people that, yes, with their culture, they still don't eat beef. Because of that, they will eat pork because pork that's not an issue for them. And plus, it's easier to cook. So I don't know if y'all can hear this. I'll try to play this real quick. That's just an example of what I'm talking about right now. Someone broke this down real quick. Let's see something. Hopefully, you all can hear this. Let me see something. If I could play this real quick. All right.
I think beef takes some skill to make delicious. Like pork, I think pork is more easy to cook. Around the world.
Try to go back, rewind it a little bit.
Take some skill to make
Give me a second, y'all.
Blackberry. Here we go. I think beef takes some skill to make delicious. Like pork, I think pork is more easy to cook. Around the world, I see people just throw a whole pig over fire. It's got tons of fat. It's got that thick skin to seal all the juices in.
That's an interesting perspective that I don't share. I feel like beef is pretty easy to cook.
How do you cook it?
Most of the time, I use what's called the reverse sear method. Set the Traeger to 265 degrees, which is fairly low, and then I'll slowly get it up to about 110 degrees. And then I use a cast iron skillet, and I get that cast iron skillet very hot, and I put beef tallow in the skillet, and then I sear it like very hot pan for about 2 minutes per side, depending on the thickness of the steak. And then I'll let it rest for about 10 minutes. Then I slice it, and then I'll put like kosher salt on it.
So to me, that doesn't sound simple at all. I think if you gave the average person a steak, they would just like either throw it on a grill and maybe cook it too much, or they'd throw it in a skillet, and they wouldn't have the delicious sear that you have. I think beef takes some skill to make delicious. Like pork.
And that gives y'all somewhat of an idea of what I just talked about. So, around the world, that's why most people cook with pork, because it's easier. But see, that's the thing. That's the temptation of pork. It's easier to cook than beef, and it tastes better than beef. I mean, breakfast. Would you prefer a pork sausage or a beef sausage? Pork bacon, beef bacon. Which one? Obviously, there's a reason why. You're going to see pork instead of beef. But see, here's the other added thing about beef itself. Because it requires more of a skill to cook, most of the time beef is reserved for wealthier people. It's usually the commoners that had to settle for pork. Okay? The commoners had to settle for pork because it was cheaper, but one realized that, wow, it's actually more flavorful than beef. So you started to see it show up on a lot of dinner tables. And what is the primary dinner table? You see pork, especially here in a lot of the Western countries. Well, it's barbecue. Pork is the #1 choice of meat for barbecue. Now, little does one know, chicken is also a meat for commoners. Yes, chicken is. Most of the wealthy people, if they chose any type of bird to eat, it was actually duck. It wasn't really chicken. Chicken is something that's cheap to cook too. But if we're talking about the king of all meats around the world, most people would actually say pork, not beef. It's just that over time, beef has become the thing that all of us can now get our hands on, even if it's not the most expensive cut or the healthiest cut. So I'll say this, to keep things more halal and kosher, if you're getting meat, avoid the cheaper cuts. And of course, you already know about pork based on what I just told you. It might taste good to you, but it ain't good for you. But a lot of times in other parts of the world, that's all they have to eat because they're commoners. A lot of times I say that about chicken too. A lot of people don't understand, but chickens actually they'll eat almost anything. Okay. A lot of people don't know this about chickens. You have to grow chickens up in an environment where they can't eat anything. Okay. Because the chicken will. I mean, what do you think they feed wasp larvae? They feed that to chickens. Okay. So there's a lot of things you don't know about chicken. So uh but yeah, we will continue on with this. I just wanted to give y'all somewhat of an idea, because basically, just to keep talking about the pork side, um, like I said, pork is forbidden amongst all things that are Islamic and Hebraic, as well as Jewish, or some people can say Semitic. You know, but the funny thing is, like a female that was Islamic, she got arrested for eating pork. Okay. So this is how seriously they take it. They are very serious about this. And because it's like a spiritual dietary thing, just trying to keep this still tied in with my spiritual channel. Even a lot of Islamic people, they are aware of the story of Legion, where all the demons had to be put inside of pigs to let them fly over the cliff. That story's in the Bible, but it's relatable to a lot of even Islamic people about that story of Legion with the demons, and you put the demons in the pig. And the funny thing is, a lot of scary movies, they use pigs as some of their demonic humanoid type of figures. Okay. But yeah, there was a particular woman in particular. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison for a viral TikTok video she filmed of herself eating pork while traveling in Bali, Indonesia. Okay. So they are very strict about that. It's strictly forbidden in Islam. And the funny thing is, in Indonesia, where she was, because she was in Bali, they're predominantly Islam in Indonesia. So it's like she knew this at that time, but just, hey, I don't know, for whatever reason, she wanted to go viral. She's just 33 years old and she has more than 2 million followers. So I'm like, well, I guess she wanted to take that risk. I don't know if she's been released or not from jail since then. This article was back from September the 21st of this year of 2023, given the date of this live stream. Okay. So even though like the funny thing of it is the way she did it, she knew that in Indonesia it's majority Muslim. She went over to Bali where they identify as Hindu. Well, even though amongst Hindu people from India, basically their culture from India, but they also have over in Bali, they don't do pork. They're not going to put you in jail for it. Yeah. And the funny thing is, she was in the video saying like Bismillah, which means in the name of God in Arabic. And she was saying that while eating the pork. So I bet some Islamic people were like, you going against Allah, that's haram. That's haram. You're going against Allah. Like they were probably very, very frustrated about this because they knew of the dietary issues with pork and how it is deeply ingrained in their culture and religion as to why they shouldn't eat pork. Okay. So yeah, to them that is not halal. It's like blasphemy. Uh, Amongst a lot of people that are Jewish, or Hebraic, or as you could say, like with the Jewish, you can also say Semitic. They feel the same way. They have a strict regard against pork. So um, there's a lot of things that's forbidden in Islam, but yeah, definitely pork is one of them. But let's continue on with what I want to talk to you all about. Yeah, I could bring up some Old Testament scriptures too about pork. So before we go further into my next talking point, not to bring up too much scripture about pork, like I said earlier in this live stream, just kind of want to give y'all just one aspect of it. See, the thing is, amongst Christianity, you see a lot of them eating pork because, you know, as I grew up here, and they were like, we're not under the law no more, we're under grace. So there's that, and that's why, you know, there's this bigger issue underlining the Christian viewpoint about being under grace and no longer being under the law, because that also goes under the dietary aspects about the law. And of course, you know, there's a lot we can go into as far as where, you know, a lot of people of Islamic, a lot of people of Hebraic and Jewish slash Semitic viewpoints feel like Christians are someone, they do some of the most blasphemous and abominable things, spiritually speaking, right? Let me see something. Pork, just kind of doing some searches. Want to give y'all something, give y'all scripture. Um, Leviticus, Leviticus, Leviticus 11. Yeah, we're going to go here. Leviticus chapter 11. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 7. Okay, going to go there. Let's see. Got to give y'all the scripture now. This rated Romer. Got to give y'all the scripture. Well, let's see something. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 7. I'm trying to give y'all two different examples of it. So I want to do the King James like I normally do, as well as the Thompson's Bible like I always do. I break it down that way. So let's see something here. So I'll read it right now out the Thompson's. I'm still trying to get the let me see something. I might be able to get it. Hold up. I think I got it. Let's see. Boom. For the first time, actually. For the first time. It is in like that the Bible actually mentions how pork is forbidden. For the first time it does this is actually in Leviticus chapter 11, verse 7. And it says, and it tells you right there, and the swine, though he divide the hoofed and be cloven footed, yet he cheweth not the cud. He is unclean for you. So there's the deception, because if you see the animal with the divided hoof and be cloven footed and cheweth the cud, that animal is clean. Now there's this idea of people that eat horses. Horses don't have a divided hoof, even though they cheweth the cud. I believe they're also cloven footed. I have to double check that cloven footed off. I have to check the cloven footed aspect, but I know for sure with horses, they don't have divided hoofs. That's why, you know, horses, you shouldn't eat horses either, but some people do, right? But we're not talking about horses. Right now, we're talking about swine, even though this does tie in with what's halal and what's kosher. Okay. So, but yes, sticking with the swine. Remember, those are swine flu, y'all. But we're not going to break down the swine flu. I'm just giving y'all different references that y'all can cross-reference, right? But yeah, as you just heard. And I'll read a little bit more of this because the scripture of Leviticus chapter 11 does go into more detail. So it starts off once again, Leviticus chapter 11, verse 7. And the swine, and I'm reading out of the King James Version first, by the way. Chapter 11, verse 7 of Leviticus. And the swine, though he divide the hoof, and be cloven footed, yet he cheweth not the cud. He is unclean for you, because the swine eat a lot of other stuff. Verse 8, of their flesh ye shall not eat, in their carcass ye shall not touch. They are unclean to you. Look at them no different than a vulture. They're the four-legged version of a vulture. They're made to clean up things. That's what the swine are made for. Okay. These, verse 9 of Leviticus chapter 11. These shall ye not eat, all that are in the waters, whatsoever hath fins and scales, and the waters in the seas and in the rivers, them shall ye eat. So we can actually do more as far as talking more about this meat being halal or kosher, because I haven't even answered the question for y'all yet with is man-made meat halal or kosher. Now we can somewhat answer that question right now as far as the way they have tamed and domesticated certain animals that normally we wouldn't be able to eat. Even what certain plants that normally we wouldn't be able to eat. Is it halal or kosher? Y'all answer that question for me, please. Now let's go and read Leviticus chapter 11, verse 7 out of the Thompson's Bible. In the pig, for though it divides the hoof, thus it a split hoof, thus making it a split hoof. It does not chew the cud. It is unclean to you. Verse 8, you shall not eat of their flesh, nor touch their carcasses. They are unclean to you. So right there, the scripture tells you, Old Testament, you should not eat the pig, you should not eat the swine. But a lot of the Christian religion, they say we're not under the law no more, because this was talking about the laws about animals, the type of food you shouldn't eat. It talks about this in Leviticus chapter 11. It starts talking about it there, okay? So, but I would hear a lot of Christians say, "Oh, we're no longer under the law." So basically, we're no longer under the law that was written in Leviticus chapter 11. Okay, and it's not to point a finger at Christians. I'm just going off what I grew up around, what I've heard, but I've had to look back on because I've seen the effects of what pork can do, how it can be cancerous, right? Especially with things become more man-made, beef can become this way. The way you can cure a lot of cancer is through fasting, okay? So that's one way. You just change your diet. You can stop a lot of these cancers from wanting to occur, right? So actually, I want to kind of segue a little bit. I want to segue just a little bit, because there's a lot to say about it. Like there's emergent evidence, basically, like from an article that I'm looking at. Emergent evidence suggests that intermittent fasting might help prevent and treat cancer by boosting the efficacy and tolerance of anti-cancer drugs and improving cancer patients' quality of life through various adaptability biological mechanisms caused by intermittent fasting. So they're just doing intermittent fasting can actually help kill a lot of these cancer cells. What your body starts doing, it starts going to overdrive because you're fasting. Your body starts to do a cleanse of everything that shouldn't be in there. Because right now, your body, without you fasting to cure this cancer, it's working overdrive to, use all of its, there's a word I'm trying to use. Basically, it's inner acids, those enzymes. It's using that to consume all this food that you still have in your body. You got to have time for your body to fast so it could clean up even things that are potentially cancerous. How's it going to do that if you're constantly putting all this different meat inside your body, especially meat that's more man-made and it is less halal and it's less kosher? It's leading to all these other cancerous things to occur. Okay. So uh, even back in the days, like cancer was unheard of back in the ancient days because people had to fast. They had to fast a lot back then. You had to know, you didn't know when your next meal was going to be, but the way we prepared meat, yeah, not just meat, but the way we prepared food back then was different than now. We were more primitive back then. Okay. So, learning about food and how to prepare it was kind of like not really something we know as much as we know of now. But in hindsight, what that did was it kept our immune system in tip top condition as far as helping us get rid of a lot of things that shouldn't be in our body, helping us to have less constipation, less bloating. And so we get malnourished in a lot of different ways, whether we're just eating mostly meat or whether we're just eating mostly plants. We are omnivores, people. We're not herbivores, nor are we carnivores. You got to have a balance of plants as well as animal. And one can argue a balance of insects too. Yeah, talks about locusts. They have more protein than a lot of beef. But that's for another conversation. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm going to eat a locust. No, you better grind it up and make it look like a hamburger, okay? Like, I'm not going to just eat a locust looking at it and I'm going to eat it. I'm not going to do that. Now, in other parts of the world, they do that. Okay, so, but that's for another conversation. We're not going to be talking about bugs right now. But yeah, plants, animals, fruits, got to have a balance of that. Got to have a balance. Okay. Some people talk about, well, in the garden, before the fall of man, we didn't eat any animals. Well, we're not living in those times right now. Everything has changed since the fall. So I'd say all you can do is get close to the way we used to eat in the garden, but to go all the way that way, I don't think that's healthy. There was an article recently that I saw about a gal that was living out in the jungle and she just tried to go on a plant-based diet and she died due to malnutrition because she just was trying to be vegan. And you're in the jungle, you're going to have to hunt something, okay? You're just going to have to hunt something. Just make sure that it is not bush meat. Make sure that it is clean based on the scripture. Well, of course, most people don't know what the scripture says. They don't read the Bible. They don't believe in it. So, they're bound to just get bush meat. So all I can say about that is I hope the bush meat don't have any parasites in it. I pray that you be safe, even though what you're doing is not halal or kosher. Yeah. But let's I want to break this down more. So I want to read further more of what these scriptures says as far as in Leviticus chapter 11. I said I was going to read a little bit more of that before we go further into what I want to talk about for today in regards to is man-made meat halal or kosher. Hopefully I'm kind of giving y'all an idea of how things have become man-made as time went on. Because see, everything became more processed, whether it was plant, animal, or fruit, everything became more processed, okay, to where it has become more man-made. So a lot of things that we consume are more man-made. A banana that we see out in the wild is different than the banana we see in the stores. Okay, that's just one example. All right. But let's continue on. Let's continue on. So going back, King James Bible, and then I'll break it down in the Thompsons. Going back to Leviticus chapter 11. Let me see something here. And actually, we could just start at the top of Leviticus chapter 11, verse 3. Actually, Leviticus chapter 11, verse 2. And then it'll eventually get to Leviticus chapter 11, verse 7. Then what it'll do after verse 7, it'll break down all the stuff that you shouldn't eat. So people, please take notes. Leviticus chapter 11. We'll just start at the beginning, right? Verse 1 on down to verse 7. And then we'll go into the scriptures where it breaks down what you shouldn't eat. Then we'll just read it out of the Thompson's Bible. Then I'll continue on with what I want to talk about. Finally, answering the question about is man-made meat halal or kosher. Okay, so verse 1, chapter 11 of Leviticus, reading out of the King James Bible. And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, verse 1, now reading verse 2, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, these are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Verse 3, whosoever parteth the hoof and is cloven footed and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that ye shall eat. So basically, things that cheweth the cud, things that you basically you eat only herbivores. You don't eat carnivores. A pig is not an herbivore, y'all. Let's go. Verse 4 of chapter 11 of Leviticus, King James. Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that cheweth the cud, nor of them that divideth the hoof as the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof. He is unclean unto you. So a lot of people in desert climates, some of them do eat camel. They shouldn't be doing that. And so camels and horses, they don't have divided hoofs, even though they chew of cud. Likewise with llamas. Okay, people they be going after llamas because they're related to camels. Verse 5 of Leviticus chapter 11, King James. In the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean to you. What is the coney? Oh, they said that's a rock badger. So I'd say that's what, like groundhogs and stuff like that, the rock badger. So yeah, eating things like even guinea pigs, like in South America, some of them eat guinea pigs. They're pretty much related to animals like rock badgers and groundhogs. So yeah, don't eat groundhogs, don't eat rock badgers. Just animals like that, because they chew. Yeah, they chew. They're herbivores, but they don't have divided hoofs. Okay, so there's that. Verse 6, Leviticus chapter 11, King James. And the hare, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. That means those that eat rabbit and hare, hare and rabbit, they're related. Those are unclean. Now, getting to chapter 11, verse 7 of Leviticus that I was just reading initially, it said, and the swine, though he divideth the cud and be cloven footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. Because like I said, he's not an herbivore, though he has all the other properties of what an herbivore is. And even a wild boar, I spoke on wild boar earlier, they are more natural in their environment than pigs are. They eat more fruits and vegetation than pigs do, wild boars do. That's why they are leaner. But nevertheless, they still eat meat from time to time too. Even wild boars do. Okay. So still falls back. Even a wild boar is unclean. Okay. But yeah, it says in verse 8, reading that once again, of their flesh ye shall not eat, and their carcass ye shall not touch. They are unclean to you. Verse 9, these ye shall not eat of all that are in the waters. Whatsoever hath fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, and in the rivers, them ye shall eat. So fishes, you can eat fish if it falls under that. Verse 10, these shall ye eat. Hold up. Oh, okay, my bad. Verse 10. And all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers and all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination to you. Verse 11, and they shall be even an abomination unto you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, but ye shall have their carcasses in abomination. Verse 12, whatsoever hath no fins nor scales in the waters, that shall be an abomination unto you. Verse 13, and these they are which hath ye shall have an abomination among the fowls, they shall not be eaten. They are an abomination, the eagle and the ossifrage and the osprey. Now, what is the ossifrage? Going to verse 13 in the Thompsons. The buzzard, the vulture. So that's what they mean by the ossifrage in the King James. They talk about the vulture and the buzzard, as I was just speaking on earlier, right? So it talks about some other things too. Okay, talks about some other things. Talks about the kite. Talks about the falcon. So yeah, in the verse 14, and the vulture and the kite after his kind, every raven of his kind, not supposed to eat that, and the owl of in the nighthawk, in the cuckoo, and the hawk after his kind, and the little owl, and the cormorant, and the great owl, and the swan, and the pelican, and the gyre eagle, and the stork, and the heron after her kind, and the lapwing, and the bat. Don't eat bats either. All fowls that creep among all four shall be an abomination unto you. Fowls that creep on all four. What fowl creeps on all four? Well, they say that pterodactyls used to creep on all four. That's for another conversation. Bats creep on all fours and they're fowls as well. Okay. And then the scripture goes into what you can eat. We'll get to that. But let's read this out of Thompson's Bible. We'll start from the top. Thompson's chapter 11, verse 1. And then we'll go all the way down to verse 21. Okay. So this is going to be pretty extensive of a live stream, but I just wanted to break down all this, especially since I know I don't go live all the time. But when I do, I give y'all a hefty amount to digest from. Very kosher things. Since I'm not Muslim or Islamic, I'm more Hebraic. I say kosher. But yes, undo Allah. About things that are halal too, right? So, starting at chapter 11, verse 1 of Leviticus out of the Thompson's Bible. The Lord spoke again to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, these are the creatures which you may eat from the animals that are on earth. Whatever divides a hoof, thus making split hoofs, and chews the cud among the animals that you may eat. Nevertheless, you're not to eat of these among those which chew the cud, or among those which divide a hoof. The camel, for though it chews cud, it does not divide the hoof. It is unclean to you. Likewise, the rock badger, for though it chews cud, it does not divide the hoof. It is unclean to you. The rabbit also, for though it chews cud, it does not divide the hoof. It is unclean to you. And the pig, for though it divides the hoof, thus making a split hoof, it does not chew the cud. It is unclean to you. You shall not eat of their flesh, nor touch their carcass. They are unclean to you. These you may eat. Whatever is in the water that has fins and scales, those in the water, in the seas, or in the rivers, you may eat. But whatever is in the seas and in the rivers that do not have fins and scales, among all the teeming life of the water, and among all the living creatures that are in the water, they are detestable things to you, or as it says in the Old Testament, an abomination. So yeah, you shouldn't eat snakes. Some people eat snakes, even sea snakes. Now I'm down to chapter 11 of Leviticus, verse 11, out of the Thompson's Bible, starting off with that. And they shall be abhorrent to you. You may not eat of their flesh, and their carcass you shall detest. Whatever in the water does not have fins and scales is abhorrent to you. Okay, down to verse 13. These, moreover, you shall detest among the birds. They are abhorrent or an abomination, right? Not to be eaten. The eagle and the vulture and the buzzard, and the kite and the falcon and its kind, every raven and its kind, and the ostrich. Yeah, you got people eating ostrich, y'all. People do. They eat them ostrich eggs too. Okay. And the ostrich and the fowl and the seagull and the hawk and its kind and the little owl and the cormorant and the great owl and the white owl and the pelican and the carrion vulture and the stork, the heron and the birds in its kinds, and the hoopoe or the cuckoo, as I just said earlier, and the bat. All the winged insects that walk on all fours are detestable to you. So, talked about winged insects that walk on all fours. Okay, so there you go with that. Verse 21. Yet these you may eat amongst all the winged insects which walk on all fours, those which have above their feet joint wings, which do jump the earth. Those of them you may eat, the locust in its kind, the devastating locust in its kind, and the cricket in its kinds, and the grasshopper in its kind. But all other winged insects which are four-footed are detestable to you. So people eating spiders and stuff like that, right? By these, moreover, you will be made unclean. Whoever touches their carcasses becomes unclean until evening. Verse 25 of Leviticus chapter 11, reading it out of the Thompson's Bible. And whoever picks up any of their carcasses shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. Concerning all the animals which divide a hoof, but do not make a split hoof, which do not eat chew cud, they are unclean to you. Whoever touches them becomes unclean. Also, whoever walks on his paws among all creatures that walk on all fours are unclean to you. So people that be eating dogs and cats. Whoever touches their carcasses becomes unclean until evening. And the one who picks up their carcasses shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. Verse 29 of Leviticus chapter 11. Now these are to you the unclean among the swarming things which swarm the earth, the mole and the mouse, and the great lizard and its kinds, and the gecko and the crocodile, and as well as the alligator. They be like, well, that's not in the Bible. Look, it's all part of the crocodilian species. Like, don't eat the crocodile or the alligator either. People cook that all the time. People cook iguanas all the time. Okay, not supposed to eat reptiles. So yes, the gecko and the crocodile and the lizard and the sand reptile and the chameleon. These are to you the unclean among all the swarming things. Whosoever touches them, they, when they are dead bodies, become clean until evening. Also, everything in which one of them may fall when they are dead becomes unclean, including any wooden article or clothing or a skin or a sack. Any article of which is made, it shall be put in water and unclean until evening. Then it becomes clean. Verse 33 of Leviticus chapter 11. For any earthenware vessel unto which one of them may fall, whatever is in it becomes unclean, and you shall break the vessel. Wow, break the vessel. Jeez. Oh, well, because what the scripture is alluding to is all the parasitic things. We go back to what the pandemic was, right? And apparently it came from a bat. Okay. So I don't want to go too further into this. This is a lot to break down, but I just want to give y'all an idea of what should and shouldn't be eaten. And it goes into what man has made along the way with all this stuff, right? That they thought they can eat. But now it is seen as very abominable. Okay. It's seen very abominable. A lot of our diets are very abominable. You got people out here eating mountain lions. There's videos on this, y'all. Look it up. People eating foxes. People just eating whatever. Okay, eating raccoons. You know, they figure they got to survive. So you got to eat this or that. You know, like you got to stick with what the Levitical law was on that, you know, because it's you just heard it. I just read it off to you. Okay. So that's me reading the Old Testament scriptures. Now let's get more into this whole man-made thing. So I want to see if y'all can answer my question based on what I've been telling y'all. We see all these different concoctions of different types of meats. And we've seen what people be doing, especially when they mix meats. You know, they mix a little bit of pork and beef together to make certain bolognese for lasagna, you know. So we see this going on. But it makes y'all wonder, is this man-made? Is this man-made stuff? Is it really halal or kosher? It's man-made. Remember, man-made, not something, you know, from the earth and you cook it as it is. No, man had to make it something else. And we wonder where all these cancers are coming from. It's literally coming from the food that you're eating. And now we got lab grown meat. If we want to go more into the man made side of things, there's more lab grown meat out here happening. Okay. Now, this is different than vegan meat. We're talking about lab grown meat. So basically, people no longer want to butcher animals, right? Got a lot of conservationists out there speaking against it. So people like, well, we're not going to kill a cow. We're just going to take part of his DNA and make that into a meat. But hey, you got even some people that are rabbis. Uh, they feel that certain meat could be kosher. Some rabbis even think this. They call it cultivated meat. They think it is. You know, I'm like, well, what happened to um, things being more natural? It's more man-made. So they basically they graft a little slab of the cattle. They do it from the stem cells, and they find ways to put it together uh, to make it more like meat texture. And so this kind of takes away from this idea of the reality of an animal that had to be hunted to be harvested or slaughtered to be harvested. But a lot of people like this is not kosher because um, just because of the way you have to go about getting that animal, it's a lab grown meat. It means that it wasn't grown naturally. Wasn't grown naturally. Because what's going to happen is they'll just be grafting the skin and then or grafting whatever flesh in the animal, and then they'll try to multiply it in that way, right? So that's what's going on. But yeah, there's a huge deal about this right now, whether it's an argument about um is it really kosher to be trying to cultivate a steak from an animal in this way, right? You know, basically, once again, you graft the flesh, just a small piece of the flesh of a cattle. They say it's like mostly a credit card size. So basically, just enough of that animal's flesh for it to heal. without you having to kill it, right? So there's that, and some more I want to break down with y'all. Just giving y'all some things to think about because this is more of an idea about lab grown meat. I want y'all to see where this is going because once again, this is all part of what's man made. Okay, this whole lab grown meat thing. So now we're going to go to the plant based side of it as far as what's lab grown because though it's plant based, that doesn't mean it's necessarily not man made. Okay. So usually when you think of a plant-based meat, you think, okay, it's from beans, from something that's of vegetation, and you grind it together and then you kind of mash it together and you make something similar to like a hamburger. Well, that's very plant-based. Okay. So a lot of people think like people like Beyond Meat, even Impossible Burger, they don't do it that way. They think that what their plant-based meat is based on them growing stuff in the labs too, just like with what they're doing with beef, making stem cell versions versus slaughtering the cattle. Okay, so uh, yeah, so people think it's like a delusionment. Yeah, because you could do things more GMO with a lot of things like Beyond Meat and the Impossible Burger. So I won't go more into it. I will say this: the difference between Beyond Meat and the Impossible Burger is the Impossible Burger, its plant-based meat is soy, and Beyond Meat's burger is based on chickpea. Now, I might need to be corrected because I think the Impossible Burger has switched over to chickpea. I believe it has. I'm not sure, but I think it has. I'll have to double check. But yeah, there's more people now saying that lab grown meat is okay for human consumption. You know, this but it gets deeper than that. It gets deeper than that because it's based on modified vegetables versus them harvesting vegetables themselves and making patties. No, it's based on modified vegetables in order to make a patty. Okay. Now, it gets further than that. You want to go down a deeper rabbit hole? Let me take a sip with you because it gets deeper than this. Okay. All right. Because you know, a lot of this modified stuff that we're talking about, I mean, it's already GMO. Well, that was the first step. But then to add to that, you had this thing called organic or non-GMO, as to say that that's even better. No, it's even worse from a lot of people's perspectives. So, but yes, the deeper rabbit hole is um, McDonald's had to deal with an onslaught because you know recently they had that burger that was sold for like a few like cents. I don't know if it was sold for like 5 cents, 25 cents, or barely a dollar. Like there was that big thing, and McDonald's wasn't the only place doing that. Wendy's did it too, where they sold a burger that was well under a dollar. And a lot of people were like, well, they were experimenting with lab meat. And some people felt that that lab meat was actually human based meat. I refuse to say human meat because that just sounds so cannibalistic, but basically human based meat. A lot of people felt these restaurants giving out these cheap burgers during that time, they were giving out human based meat. That's why it was so cheap. Like, so yeah, there's a few customers that accuse McDonald's uh, during the National Cheeseburger Day of using this lab meat or this human based meat. A lot of people felt like no, that was they was putting humans in that. But there is this idea that some people have been talking about that certain aspects of cannibalism is okay. So you have that sector of group too. So once again, it's man-made meat whether it's human-based meat, plant-based modified meat, or animal-based modified meat through the stem cells. Is that halal or kosher? Please let me know in the comment section below. Okay. So I told y'all I was going to go down a deep rabbit hole with this particular live stream, but hey, the timing has to be right. And so why not, after you just had that ham from that pig this past Christmas during these holidays, because you're still going to eat probably a few more slabs of ham, right? Still going to eat some slabs of ham. There are people even roasting up rabbits at this time of the year. Okay, so you have that too. Can we continue? You got some people roasting duck. You know, duck is a waterfowl, you know. So that was also another unclean animal to eat, was a waterfowl. Okay. So on a side note though, I want to say this. This is like basically, you know, contrary to popular belief, women shouldn't cook. You know, that's from my perspective. Women shouldn't really cook. They can assist with cooking, but in my experience, I find that most women actually prefer not to cook, only if necessary, or if she absolutely wants to cook at that moment because she just wanted to be like, hey, I want to just do something, you know, special, you know, like, you know, just something, you know, to please the other person. I find it that the particular ladies that do cook, not all, I know that some gals are good chefs. I'm not knocking that, but I'm just talking about in particular some gals. Huh, they tend to do more of what I call spiritual cooking. They add a little something special in that little recipe, a little something more on the casting a spell type of stuff, casting a curse. She might have put a mouse up in that meal. You thinking it's chicken. Yeah. But yeah, if you look on the internet, there is like a huge conversation going on about this very subject of if a woman should cook. Like you got a lot of guys, you know, amongst a lot of the relationship sectors, even here on YouTube, guys be like, you know, a woman is supposed to cook. Like, but here's something I want to share with y'all. So you don't have to take my word for it. I want y'all to just kind of hear the conversation, the dynamic of the conversations, and you tell me what you think. What saith you? So once I actually get to it, I'll just play it real quick so y'all can hear it, give y'all a better perspective. I would have shared my screen with this, but wasn't able to this time, but I shall do it next time. Basically, what I'm about to share with y'all is based on this idea that a lot of people in a lot of the male sectors and relationship sectors, even here on YouTube, they say things like, if you can't cook, you'll stay single. Like they'll tell a gal that if you can't cook, you'll stay single. So here we go.
What would you do if I couldn't cook?
You'd be single.
Can you cook?
That's irrelevant.
No. Can you cook though?
I mean, can you fight? Let's ask pointless questions.
How's it a pointless question? I'm trying to get to know you.
Because that's your job.
What's my job?
To make sandwiches.
Did you actually just say my job is to make sandwiches?
How am I going to fight off the intruders if you don't make sandwiches? I need sustenance.
Okay. What would you do if I couldn't cook?
So this was interesting because when I saw this, I won't really talk about what content creator this is related to. And there's a full video on this too, but I don't know. I can't get the link to it. But yeah, some guys go too far back in the day about like a woman's role, you know, when at the end of the day, you know, we should be about taking care of each other. So I say all this as far as how does this tie in with what's halal and what's kosher in regards to its man-made meat that way. Well, based on what I just said about how you got some of the feminine that are like witches and you can't trust what they're cooking, think about what they actually like to eat. Some of these witches be eating abominable things. So, fellas, you have to think about, if you're a very spiritual person, you have to make sure that the woman that you're interested in, she's being halal or kosher herself. So it's not just about, and ladies, you too, because all that will affect your body. Like when you guys interact with each other intimately and sexually, all that stuff pours out of your body onto you or into you. Okay. So you got to think about what that person has been consuming. This is very important. So trying to make sense of all this for y'all. Hopefully some of y'all get it. If not, feel free to ask me a question in the comment section below on the replay, as long as you're being respectful. But yeah, not to digress. In regards to food itself, I seldomly trust restaurants for the same reason about the witches. Because what are they cooking back there? You know, we always talk about these mystery meats. I actually had got surprised myself. I went to a Japanese restaurant and they gave me some sushi. And no, it wasn't really sushi. It was something mixed with, I think, rice, white rice. And I started eating it. I was like, it's good. And then he was like, well, that's eel. I was like, ew? He was like, yes, eel. I was like, oh man, he got me eating some straight up eel. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, it tastes like chicken. But yeah, I was just like, oh man, I'm eating some that, you know, the Bible tells me the Bible told me I'm not supposed to be eating, you know. So, uh, but yeah, I suddenly trust restaurants. To me, it's just good to go there to sample their food, but never continuously go there to eat, because all you can do is just learn from what they've cooked, and then you just go cook it at home yourself. For example, lately a lot of restaurants, they've been simply lying about their dry aged steaks. Like they don't really dry age steaks. What they do is they take the butter and fat from a dry aged steak and apply that to an actual steak that they're cooking, that they're going to what, reverse sear and stuff like that, and then they'll throw that dry aged steak fat onto that fresh steak so that you can still, I guess, have like the flavor or the essence of the dry aged steak, even though that actual steak that's being cooked wasn't a dry aged steak. So if they're lying about that, what else do you think that they're lying about? Okay. I'm just saying, like, this is a lot to think about, y'all. This is a lot to think about. This is a whole lot to think about, because all this stuff that's becoming more man-made, even the preparation of food, not just the food itself, but even the preparation of food is something to think about. But before I continue on, I just kind of want to jump back to what I was saying earlier about what the woman's role is as far as cooking or not. Like I said, a woman shouldn't really be the one cooking. I mean, the man, he's the man, so he's gonna cook, all that. They always say the man is provider, right? If the man is the provider, well, he provides the food too. So, she can assist with his cooking as well as his cleaning. But in it all, even if she decides to cook for him, there are times she can remember what he cooked and then cook that for him while he's not feeling well. Add her own spin to what he's cooked. You know how many times, y'all, that a lot of times a lot of gals that have been with me have benefited from me cooking. They've learned a lot from me in the way that I've been cooking. So this tells y'all this is what the man is about, not what the woman is about, right? But yeah, as I heard someone say, and I've said this earlier, it should be about two adults coming to each other, coming together to take care of those that they care for. It goes back to all this. Once again, a woman, there's nothing wrong with her assisting a man with the cooking as well as the cleaning too. But that's not to say that's her job, her role, her responsibility. No, be a good assistant. Okay. So getting back to what I was just talking about as far as all these steaks and all that stuff. Like I said, if they're lying to you about just dry aging steaks, I mean, Think about what else they could be lying about. We haven't even talked about the parasitical stuff as well as the chemical stuff regarding food that they're lying about. I mean, even the way something tastes a little bit acidic, the way you might like it, maybe it has like a citrusy taste. It might be something else making it taste citrus like that, right? Something that's going to kill you slowly. And you don't know it, but you're going to know it, but hopefully you don't know it. You don't know it when it's too late. But yeah, getting more into the whole lab grown meat side of this. Here's the pinnacle of what I want to bring up as far as is man-made meat, halal or kosher. Last but not least, let's talk about food with human cells. Because I did just talk about human-based food that people thought that McDonald's was trying to sell, but there are people that are growing food with human cells out there. So I saw an article. It was on Twitter one time, right? Uh, yeah, y'all could look it up. Just look up food with human cells on Twitter or X. Yeah, but you can still, it still shows that that's twitter.com. But, we know it's the letter X because Elon Musk, he now owns Twitter. And he turned it to the letter X, like what was it called, that space shuttle? I can't think of the name of the space shuttle company. I'm sorry, y'all. But yeah, anywho, uh, they put the human cells in a lemon here as an example. In basically slight irritation, like it's just about really at this point when it comes to making, like in this case, they're using a lemon to make lemon juice, but to produce it, you have to like keep it alive versus squeezing that lemon and that's all you get from that lemon. Like if you kept it alive, like how do you keep it alive? Well, that's what they did by putting human cells inside of that lemon. If you can keep that lemon alive long enough to produce a lot of juice, then you have a lot of life in that lemon. But see, the problem is that you start to put human cells in it, it starts to become more human-like. They've had accounts of these human cell type of plants and vegetables have teeth. Some start to grow hair. So I'm like, okay, you're gonna make some new mutants out here. And theory has it, this is actually how the dinosaurs were made, y'all. Like, I kid you not. So you might as well say that food is just soft cannibalism. Like you're eating human DNA in some of the fruits. So to all the vegan lovers out there, you're not safe either. But this was a lot to speak on here, putting this all together. It took some time. It was a pleasure putting this all together, just the time that I spent getting this live stream together. I hope that someone really got a joy out of this particular information. And if there's more you can add to it, feel free. I'm all about more information. So feel free to comment in the comment section below. And until next time, y'all continue to be blessed. Mitakuye or Yasin. Stay on the straight and narrow as well.